In the Tao it says that a victory in war is to be celebrated by mourning, because it still gives evidence that we have not found our divine nature. If you love those who love you, what virtue lies in that? Even the morally weak love those who love them. And if you're good to those who are good to you, what virtue lies in that? Even the morally weak do that. Love your enemies. Be good to them. Share with them without expecting anything in return. Then your reward will be rich, and you will be sons of the Most High. He is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be compassionate like your Father. How much of that do we practice on our planet? Divine love is a love that we have inside of us because it's the only thing we have to give away. That's all we can give away. Again, Patanjali, when you are steadfast, this is who Jesus was. This is who Rumi was. This is who Shams of Tabriz was. This is who Muhammad was. This is who Buddha was. When you are steadfast, which means there's no ego, when you are steadfast in your abstention of thoughts of harm directed towards yourself and others, that all living creatures will cease to feel fear in your presence. That's who St. Francis was. I've been to Assisi. Some of you were there with me. How many? Who was there? Look, so many of you were there with us last year, just a year ago, a little over a year ago. Do you remember the lecture in Assisi? When I stood there and St. Francis just entered my body, and literally I just lost it. I couldn't speak for 7-8 minutes. It was overwhelming, the love. And everyone in the room just stood up and just held their hands out. You can reach this level of consciousness. There's a great Indian poet. His name was Tagore, Rabindranath Tagore. In 1927, he wrote a collection of poetry called the Patanjali. This is what he said about the ego. I went out alone on my way to my tryst. But who is this me in the dark? I step aside to avoid his presence, but I escape him not. He makes the dust rise from the earth with his swagger. He adds his loud voice to every word I utter. He is my own little self, my Lord. He knows no shame. But I am ashamed to come to thy door in his company. That's the ego. That's the part of us that we have to transcend. That's where we have to go within and recognize who we truly are. And who we are is divine love. When Jesus was asked, who is God? He said, God is love. And he that dwelleth in love dwelleth in me, and I in him. It's just love. That's all Rumi is about. It's about love. It's about love for the beloved, love for the divine, love for that place within us that is our excitement. It is our God. It's what God is. Whatever excites you is the part of you that is saying, this is my Dharma, this is what I'm here for. And you know what it's always about? It's always about serving. The miser who loves his gold gets no love from the gold. There's no love in gold. The reason the miser is so exquisitely happy with his gold is because of the outpouring of love that he has for it. That's what he feels. When you feel so good about your Mercedes, or you feel so good about this ship, or you feel so good about your great paintings, as I read to you at the beginning of today, the Chinese versus the Byzantines. When you feel so great about these great accomplishments and all that you have, and all that you own, and all that you've defeated, and all the wins that you've had, it's nothing to do with any of that stuff external to you. It's the outpouring of love that you are giving to it. And you can't have love in your life, and you can't give it away unless that's what you have inside. And it's something I'd like to suggest to you when I talk about you can't give away what you don't have. That whatever it is that you are giving away, in the way of being offended or being an appreciator, and by the way, appreciation versus depreciation is the highest form of energy that you can have to your thoughts. In other words, every time you have a thought of depreciation, you have weakened yourself in some form. Any kind of a thought of depreciation. Whereas if you can shift a thought of depreciation into one of appreciation, even for that which you have been conditioned to believe deserves to be depreciated, if you can figure out a way to change and alter your thoughts, then you move into a higher energy. But more than moving into a stronger and a higher energy with appreciation, is that you move into a level of consciousness called synchronicity, in which you start to negotiate the presence of energy to serve as an attractor pattern. And that what I'm speaking about, solid energy as the lowest form of energy, and spiritual energy as the highest and the fastest form of energy, and that spiritual energy, the energy of love, the energy of cheerfulness, the energy of kindness, the energy of peace, when this energy is brought to the presence of the energy in which you have problems, lower energy, that these problems dissolve, they can't survive any more than darkness can survive in the face of light, then there is some kind of a gap that you have to negotiate between the world of problem energy and the world of higher energy. But what you have to look at here, when I say you can't give away what you don't have, is to ask yourself, if I can't give away what I don't have, it means that I am giving away what I do have. And because it's the only thing I can give away. I have to have it to give it away. So, and if energy is the vehicle upon which things are attracted and come into my life, then what is it that I am sending out there, because it is in giving that we receive, what is it that I'm giving? What am I sending out there? What kind of energy do I send out there? And begin to look at that as the rationale and the explanation and the reasoning behind what is showing up in your life. That it really has nothing to do with what's going on outside of you in other people and in other events and in what other people are saying or doing or circumstances of your life. As much as we like to use that as an explanation and a rationale for it, that in fact, if you can change around your thinking to ask yourself, why do I keep attracting what it is that I'm attracting into my life, and what can I do to attract something different into my life? These things that we're calling attractor energies, that possibly, just possibly, I might be able to come to a place where I recognize that everything that's going on in my life, everything, I take responsibility for. And
if I continue to attract the wrong people, or scarcity instead of abundance, or illness instead of health, or unhappiness rather than happiness, or fear rather than faith. And again, I always go back to that very famous prayer of St. Francis, where there is doubt, let me bring faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. Where there is hatred, love. And if I can find a way to rid myself of those, just the thoughts, that I might possibly open myself up to a new idea, a mind that is open to everything, is one in which I say that I have been responsible for attracting all of these things into my life, and now I'm going to work at it for a given period of time of attracting something different into my life. I'm going to go with new attractor patterns of energy. I'm just going to go with it and see if I can make that shift begin to take place. And this thing that I have referred to as synchronicity is something that Jung said is something that is very real and is very powerful and is something that you can access. Which means that as you reach a faster energy yourself, you see, if everything is energy and nothing happens until something moves, and everything is moving, then you yourself are just a great big bundle of energy. You are just vibrating, and if you are a bundle of energy, if you buy this idea that your hand and your feet and your eyes and your entire body is really nothing more than a series of very, very tiny subatomic particles all moving together very fast with spaces between them, and you see that and you can get that, then you recognize that there's got to be a frequency at which you are vibrating. It's got to be vibrating at some frequency. And if you can also accept the idea that if I could move to a faster and a higher, more spiritual energy, that I will literally change the vibration at which I am vibrating, then it begins with the thoughts. It begins with how I am processing and thinking thoughts, that I can absolutely get to a place where I can start to radiate out different kinds of energy. The softer you are, the less rigid you are, the more flexible you are as a person, the more you can accomplish. And this is a great way to practice in parenting as well. And this idea that a rigid thought, how many times have you heard this idea that if I tell you something, I'm going to stay consistent with it. We have a set of rules, these are the rules, and we'll do it this way. In the Tao it says the more rules you make, the more rule breakers you create. It's true. The more rules you have in your house about how everything has to go. We had in our house, my wife would have a big jar of M&Ms. Peanuts, all these different multicolored ones, and the kids in our house, because we didn't feed them sugar and we didn't give them sodas and stuff like that, so they were just more like a decoration. Every once in a while, someone would take them. They'd hardly ever be replaced. Now, when we had kids come over to our house who weren't ever allowed to have such horrible things, you should have seen their behavior. They would scoop them up, they'd be putting them in their pockets, and they'd get their purses, and they'd open it up, and, the whole thing would be empty. I said, what are you doing? He said, well, you mean you could just have these whenever you want them? I said, well, we don't really have any rules about that. It's just, it's not something that we encourage or discourage. It's just there. It's like Emerson had a wonderful line. He said, a foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. A foolish consistency, a rigid consistency. So that there are many people who will say, if I say it on Monday, you can be absolutely certain that on Wednesday, I'm going to believe the same thing, regardless of what might happen on Tuesday. Now, Tuesday might have something real that you might want to be changing your mind. You might want to say, I thought that this time, but now I've seen this, and now we can shift. And you can see how this can become and so much about the Tao is on leadership. Leadership in the family, leadership in the community, leadership geopolitically. Less rigidity, more openness, more willingness to listen and say, I changed my mind. Because a foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. And what I believed on Wednesday has changed because of what happened on Tuesday. Now, another important thing to say to your children, to your friends, to your lover, to your spouses, to whomever, to the people you work with, words that we're so terrified to say, but which give us a sense of living with the Tao. I don't know. I don't know. I'll look it up. Say it. I don't know. Doesn't hurt. Say it again. I don't know. Isn't it fearful? I mean, so many people, and it's like very freeing, because my kids ask me something, and I say, I don't know. They say, Dad, you know everything. You know everything. I say, well, I don't know that, and I'll look it up, or we'll try to find an answer to that, but I don't quite know. I know that I spent 20 years running, and I ran every day for 20 years, for 22 years, without missing a day. 8 miles. Never missed a day. That's rigid, all right? Some call that obsessive. But you brush your teeth every day, I used to say, and you don't call that obsessive. And you go to the bathroom every day, and you don't say, well, he's obsessively doing that again today. You don't do that. But anyway, what I learned is that even in the world of exercise, there are certain things that are built in to make us rigid, to make us stiff, to make us hard. And we lift, and we run, and we kick, and this is what we call working out. There's another kind of working out that is ancient. It goes back to the time of Lao Tzu and before, which is called yoga. And yoga means union. It means union with your source. And when you do yoga, you can stay in the same place. You can do the equivalent of 8 miles. When I used to run 8 miles, I had to run 4 miles that way, turn around, 4 miles back. And I'd be sweating. Now I can do yoga, and I can just stand in one place. And in 90 minutes, by being supple, by making myself stretch, by not being hard and rigid, I can get that out there. I can get that leg up. I can do these kinds of things. And 90 minutes later, it's like I'm totally sweating, and I feel so different. I used to, when I would go out at night to eat or something, after running so many miles, running marathons and doing those things, I'd go to get up, and it would be, okay, it's going to take a little while, because everything was so like that. That doesn't happen anymore, because I've given up hard. I've given up being rigid and substituted it for being supple, for being flexible, for living a life in which I don't have to always be so fierce. Listen to this verse of the Tao Te Ching. It's one of my all-time favorites, verse number 76. A man is born gentle and weak. At his death, he becomes hard and stiff. All things, including the grass and the trees, are soft and pliable in life, dry and brittle in death. Stiffness is thus a companion in death. Flexibility is a companion in life. And it's not just for how you exercise, it's how you think. How you think.
More conscious of your divinity, just conscious of your divinity, that you have the power to negotiate the presence of this energy to do incredible things for yourself. But there are 3 things you have to do. The first is you have to have what I call recognition of this force. And recognition of this force is nothing more than simply saying to yourself, I am open to the idea that there is a force that is greater than I am, to which I am always connected, that is everywhere at once, and no place that it is not. And I would like to just say that it is available to me. You don't have to have proof of it. You don't have to have anybody confirm it. It is just simply an awareness that it exists. See, once you recognize that this force that opens the flowers,
that keeps the planet in alignment, that grows your fingernails every night and beats your heart, independent of your opinion about it. You go to sleep at night, you look at your fingernails the next morning, they're longer than they were the night before, and you're sound asleep. Not only that, but whatever force it was that grew yours, grew the person next to you and grew the people across the oceans as well. There's a force that's growing everybody's fingernails, whether they like it or not, and growing their hair, well, most of them. And beating their hearts and circulating their food and opening the flowers and turning, acorns into oak trees and turning embryos into human beings. There's a force. There's something. I can't see it. I don't know what it is. I recognize it. If you recognize it and that there's no place that it's not, the beauty of that is that it's also then in everything that you would like to attract into your life. And here you've just taken one step towards diminishing the role of the ego in your life. If you can recognize that there is a power in the universe that is that is part of you. If there's no place that it is not, then it has to be in you. And if it is in you, and there's no place that it's not, it also has to be in whatever you'd like to attract into your life. So all you have to say is, I'm already connected to that which I would like to attract into my life. That what you want, wants you. All you have to do is somehow figure out a way to realign your inner intention and recognize I am not separate from it, I am connected to it, it just hasn't shown up in my space yet. But I'm already connected to it. That's a very powerful insight. That's why people at higher levels of consciousness can manifest, because there's no delay between what they put in their attention on and having it show up. It's why the gift of fish and loaves is the ability to see hungry people and to think food, and it shows up. And even the least among you can do all that I have done. It's all within you to be able to do that. So that shifting takes place first and foremost with the recognition that there is a force, there is a power. That's how you treasure your divinity. The second thing that you do is what I call realization. And realization is the time in your life when you stop telling yourself that I believe this or don't believe this on the basis of what somebody else says or does. It comes from my own personal direct experience. It's the only thing I will rely upon. I will not rely upon the written word. I will not rely upon the spoken word. I will not rely upon someone else out there telling me that this is what God is or how it works. I will rely upon the realization of it through my own direct conscious experience. And I will not try to persuade anybody else. I will not listen to or argue with anybody about whether it's real or not real, whether it works or doesn't work. I know it. Be still and know. And you have that knowing, and the realization is there, and you trust in that realization. I trust in my own experience. I've had it. I have talked to this force. I have seen it work. I've put my attention on it. I've been able to manifest what I want in my life. I've been able to heal myself. I've been able to help heal others. I've been able to feel comfort in times when others feel sadness. These are all things that I know come to me through my direct experience of God. And it doesn't matter what anybody else out there says or does. Realization. I now realize it and trust in that. That's the second step. And the third I call reverence. And reverence is where you begin to have a daily commune with this power, with this force. That you are not only aware of it, but you are communing quietly with it. You're communing quietly with it. Sell your cleverness and purchase bewilderment. Be in a state of bewilderment. That's what I mean by being spiritual. One of the ways to test whether you're on the path that I'm speaking about, the path of being into a spiritual being, having a human experience rather than the other way around, is to detect in yourself how much of my energy and my time do I spend being in a state of cheerfulness. How cheerful am I? Or how morose am I? How down am I? How, when I'm coming home to my family and to those that I love, how am I anticipating what it's going to be like when I go into the house? Am I down more? Am I unhappy more? Am I looking at the pessimistic side of life? Am I always feeling that something might be wrong? Am I putting my attention on what I don't want? Because if your thoughts are on what you don't want, and what you think about is what expands, what you don't want is what you'll continue to see showing up in your life. You'll keep purchasing it. Another element of what we call spiritual in these three words in this program is the sense or the extent to which you feel connected to other people. You see, the ego is the part of us that believes that we're separate from each other. I'm separate from you, you're separate from me. You have a different body than I do. I'm separate from what I would like to attract into my life, and I am separate from God. When you move into a spiritual approach to life, you begin to see yourself as connected to everyone and everything. And competition is replaced by something called cooperation. And when you see another human being in pain or struggling, you know that a part of you is in pain and struggling. And you begin to reach out rather than looking within and saying, how does this affect just me? It's almost as if you have to make a shift. And there's a wonderful story, and I'd like to share this story with you. It's a story, this is a story that took place at the Special Olympics in Seattle. And it's a true story. And when I read it, it really grabbed me. And I thought, when I do this program, I would like to share this with the rest of the world. A few years ago, at the Seattle Special Olympics, 9 contestants, all physically or mentally disabled, assembled at the starting line for the 100-yard dash. At the gun, they all started out, not exactly in a dash, but with a relish to run the race, to finish, and to win. All that is except one little boy who stumbled on the asphalt and tumbled over a couple of times, and he began to cry. The other 8 heard the little boy crying. They slowed down and looked back. Then they all turned around and went back, and every single one of them. And one little girl with Down syndrome bent down and kissed him and said, "This will make it better." Then all 9 linked arms and walked together to the finish line. Everyone in the stadium stood, and the cheering went on for several minutes. Isn't that a beautiful story? It's the kind of thing that I refer to when I use this word spiritual. A sense of an awareness that it isn't about being better than somebody else. I think true nobility is not about being better than anyone else. It's about being better than you used to be. And I know this about myself, that if any one of you watching this show, or any of you here in this audience were giving this talk, I could be sitting in that audience, and I would have just as much to learn from what you had to say to me as you have to learn from what I may be saying to you. The thing that I know for certain today is that I'm just better than I used to be. As a man, as a father, as a writer, as a speaker, I know that I'm better than I used to be. And I try to make that something that I do each and every day. Just a little bit better than I used to be. To me, that's what I mean when I use the concept of spirituality.